All right, hope everybody's doing good. We are here today with a teacher, horn player, musician here in Kansas City, Mark Hamblin. How you doing?
Yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure.
So we don't know each other very well. We just met like literally 5 minutes ago, and we have a couple buddies in common. Scotty McBee, we both know he's a great musician in town. He was on the show already, but he mentioned your name to have some maybe good stuff to say. But since we don't know each other, tell me a little bit about how you started playing and how your music background.
Sure, yeah. And Scotty had said I should come talk to you because he and I have very similar philosophy of music and music education in particular. And so, my background is I've been teaching elementary music, like general music, kindergarten to 5th grade for 18 years, which I didn't expect to do when I went to college. And then I play trumpet and keyboards and am one of 5 singers in a variety band that we do mostly weddings. And that actually didn't expect to get playing keyboards, for instance, either. Realized along the way that you can play trumpet with one hand and keys with the other. So that way it makes it easier when you have a smaller band. We can have, if we're all singing and I'm playing 2 instruments, then we have a 6-piece, but it sounds like, as big as some 12-piece bands, but it's easier to find a time to rehearse or not have to call somebody in to sub on a gig or something like that. So that simplifies things a lot. So yes, a lot of the stuff I just ended up along the way not expecting to be where I am as far as that goes. Yeah, in college I did study trumpet as my major instrument, but then I played just as much bass and orchestra and played in jazz and everything, and then also played electric bass in rock bands and things. And then I actually, even when I got out of college, didn't expect to keep playing much trumpet and thought, well, I'll probably just end up playing bass in some bands because everybody needs bass but trumpet not so much, and kind of just fell in with some guys that were doing like a funk band at the time and was like, oh man, I love doing this stuff. And then went from there to eventually running my own variety band, like I said. So some of it you just never know where it's going.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, and that happens a lot. I think for myself, definitely junior year, I was like, I like this. I really like this music stuff, and I think I want to be public school orchestra. I definitely, and then I ended up going like, I don't know if public is good for me, but I definitely like teaching, so I went to private. But country music was mine, probably, of what you were just talking about, where I'm like, man, I hate country music. Screw that stuff, But then I played in a band, and I was like, man, this is kind of not so bad. And so I really shifted my. Was that weird to go through and kind of prepare for one thing a little bit and then go, well, like even your general music. I mean, it sounds like you didn't plan on that necessarily.
Yeah, well, and a similar experience where you're talking about, I had this plan for I'm gonna be teaching this. I went in thinking, I'm gonna teach band.
Right.
First thinking like, it'd be great to teach high school band. I realized along the way, man, you can do more good by teaching beginners. And I thought, I'll teach middle school band. And then I realized along the way there too, wait, the real beginners are kindergartners in public school.
Not even 4th, 5th.
Yeah, and I mean, really, if you can teach them before they're in kindergarten, that's even better. But it's like a main gig, me being able to say, I can teach kindergartners. I've actually been thinking lately about, maybe I'll start teaching.
Preschool
outside of what I'm doing now. I've talked to my wife many times about how when I retire, I'd love to teach like maybe at a Montessori school where they've got younger students, plus just the Montessori concept I like philosophically as well, and it's real good for kids. The child-centered aspect of things.
But
I started with hoping to do that, and basically I during the class about how to teach elementary music, because my certification is kindergarten through 12th grade, so which would include K through 5 general music, so I have all the same education for that as like a vocal major. So a lot of people don't get that because a lot of elementary is teaching vocal, but when I took that class, that's what made me realize, oh wow, like I could really do more good here. And I went out to teach like 15-minute mini lessons in different classes of different teachers, and the first one I did was like the superstar music teacher in the area. I did a mini lesson for her, and she pulled me aside afterwards and was like, that was great. Whenever you teach that concept, do it exactly like that in the future. And then she went and told my professor the same thing, and said, this guy, he really needs to teach elementary music. And the professor said, oh no, he's a band guy, he wants to teach band and everything. And by the end of that class though, I was like, no, I want to teach elementary music.
Yeah, so, you liked it. Yeah.
In fact, I would never tell somebody to do this nowadays, but At the time, when I went out to interview, applications, everything, I only applied for like K through 5, K through 6 positions. If it didn't have kindergarten, then I didn't even apply. Now I would tell somebody, just apply for any job you can get as far as, teaching in the public school. But at the time that I was like, nope, I do not want to teach anything else. That's what I want to do.
That's cool. So I know with the general ed and doing little kids as opposed to middle school, high school, adult, I have a lot of trouble with little kids. And my mom I've said this on the show a lot. My mom taught special ed K through 6 for a long time, and she was joking that a lot of her paras would come in and be like, man, I can't even think that low. You know what I mean? Like with that, we're dealing with these basic concepts like high and low sounds or something. And she's like, they were like, I can't even, what comes before just working out 2 + 2 or something, or half, of something, these basic concepts that you're doing. And she was talking about, well, you write it. If they don't get to write it, then you bring them a little block and they do it physically. And then, you got to go back to more concrete stuff. And I have a really hard time with just dealing with, when I want to get into music things and they won't stand still. You know what I mean? So that's I'm obsessed with the step before the step of learning the concept. So before we even learn an alphabet, they have to sit there nicely.
Yeah, in this
you know
case,
what I mean? So the behavior is what happens before, because you can't get to this if they're walking around.
Yeah.
You have to get them to sit there first, and they're actually barely paying attention, but you got to get that before you. Do you have trouble? I just have trouble with that. With going all the way back down to, and that's helped recently for me to start trying to think that way, where for example, if I'm reading and they can't read, I'm like, oh, okay, well, hold on. So they first of all don't know what a measure is. So we need to go back to the measure. What is a measure day, teaching. And then if they don't know the measure day, they don't know this is a quarter note. Okay, so we need to go back to, what is a quarter note day, and then oh wait, yeah, they don't know what number it is because they can't literally they can't point to it, so I was like, I want to be here, I want to just get on with it and work on some actual dynamics and work on some actual interesting stuff, but we have to go back to this stage. Do you ever, I don't know if you think in those terms.
You've thrown out a bunch of stuff here. So part of it, like you were talking about, especially with the age students I do, when we're talking about starting in kindergarten, first graders, second graders, you've got, if you look at Piaget, it's pre-operational learners and concrete operational learners. So that can really change how you would approach things with those students. Like you're saying, here are physical blocks for math. That's a really important step that you just don't want to skip. Absolutely. So that they understand what you're doing and why and what it really is, rather than just giving them this abstract concept.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot with music too. And a lot of the time people try and do that too early. And not just with kids, even with adults, when you're teaching them to start with an abstract concept rather than
do the abstract too early.
Yeah, rather than just starting by making music. So, the biggest thing there is to have such a solid foundation of making music before even trying to tackle the abstract concepts or trying to tackle the reading, which is an abstract concept really as well. If you think about it, a lot of the time people make the analogy between music and language. Music isn't technically a language, but it's very similar in so many ways.
Right.
And one of the ways is we all grow up, and before you get to kindergarten, you're speaking all the time.
Yeah.
You're fluent already at speaking by the time you get there. You may have some problems and use double negatives or whatever it is, or irregular verbs a lot of the time I hear kids use wrong. So there are some things to fix, but for the most part, by the time they get to kindergarten, they are fluent in the language. Then they begin to learn to read. Then they learn the concepts of how to read as well, and breaking things down. But until then, it doesn't really make much sense. So a lot of that, I used to always be like, okay, I'm not going to teach any of that kind of stuff really until first grade. In kindergarten, we get this super solid foundation. They get the beat solid as a rock.
Right.
I get them singing on pitch with a good tone.
Then they have these years of it solid as a rock, but
they develop their ear, they develop a vocabulary, all those things. Recently, I went to a workshop and then I went and studied for a week. I took a class from a guy named John Feierabend, and he flat out says, look, the first 3 years, don't even bother teaching reading. You're going to develop this even more solid than what I was planning on doing. And I thought, man, I went and took the class, and I was like, yeah, this is really the way to go.
Yeah.
You get them so solid on this before you even worry about like what is a quarter note really.
Because that's the Suzuki idea, obviously.
Sure,
Suzuki is like hard on them with ear, and they get all this internalized everything.
Yeah.
And then they're like, dude, reading is easy. You know, they can figure it out later, but this stuff is not easy. And they're gonna get it. Like me as a 3-year-old, you know, starting violin. You know, it's like, and yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And so you mentioned something interesting. So we were talking about the idea of you start in kindergarten with these like sort of drills or foundational stuff. And I've heard a lot of people recently have a very different perspective on that, and some people agree with that in the sense that you want to get this stuff and then they have the muscle memory for these years to come.
Sure.
But then other people are talking about no, you make it majorly fun first. You grab them kind of emotionally, and then you can take them wherever they want because they're like with you as the teacher. They trust you. And so what I always want to try to do is I'm like, no, foundations first, right? No, quarter note first, and like all the kind of drilly kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you feel about that?
I think you have to put the two together in that sense, where it's still like everything has to be musical, basically. So I know, as an instrumentalist, you grow up and you're like, oh, I learned my scales and stuff like that, right? But what I'm thinking is, okay, anything that I'm teaching really has to be put into a musical context,
right?
And as much as possible, especially when I'm teaching young kids like this. A lot of the time they don't know what they're learning. They're learning something, but they don't even know. I'm intentionally doing a song in the Dorian mode so that they are familiar with that. They have no idea that they're learning this new mode.
But you're not saying Dorian.
Never.
They don't care.
No need. It doesn't help either.
Right.
If anything, that's one of I think the tricky things about being a teacher is knowing when to tell them what, as far as that goes, and when to just do things. Which is also tricky too as a teacher, because even if my principal comes in the room, I have to make sure to say after a lesson, catch them later at lunch or something, and say, hey, by the way, here are all the things we were working on that you wouldn't have noticed, just because
you don't know.
Just because it's something that you would have probably never thought about. Like they were learning all these things, even though it's not explicit. Which there's a lot of pushes in education have like. I can statements and everything at the beginning of every lesson. The students know, maybe say like, by the end of this lesson, I can do blah blah blah. This kind of thing. But a lot of the time, it's just like, no. You're just going to have, a musical experience the whole way through, and by the end of it, you've gotten better at these things.
Right, and so that's probably very similar again to the Suzuki, where they don't know what they're doing, but they're hearing this Dorian mode over and over, and that's probably what happened to me. Is I remember a big light bulb with like theory in high school, where that senior year, it finally dawned. I think it was probably the theory teacher, because I took a theory class in high school. I think it was probably happy birthday or something, and she's like, happy birthday to you, and I was like, oh, these are chords, and I'd heard chords, and so I could tell very easily when the chord was changing, but I didn't know it was called chords,
Sure.
So that's probably a wiser idea of what you're talking about, and I probably do this really badly, is even the younger kids, maybe even 4th, 7th grade, I want to explain too much. Why? I want to explain the why we're doing this, but I need to keep remembering that, yes, I'm trying to give them verbal context of why we're standing here doing this stupid thing right now, but they don't care. They don't care why. We're just doing it, especially the kindergartners. So would you say that would be a piece of advice, is like you're obviously explaining the song, explaining the exercise, but not in the why you need to know this kind of stuff too
sometimes.
early.
Yeah, it's the too early sometimes.
Yeah.
It just depends. I think that's one of the harder things about teaching, honestly. I mean, I think that as teachers, we need to always be thinking about the why, and not just do things because that's the way we were taught, or or because of anything really. I mean, you have to think that through. And then I think a lot of the time it is important for students to know why they're doing certain things. But like with kindergartners, when they come in and we get our voices warmed up and get into head voice and things like that by just making silly sounds and stuff and siren noises and all these kind of things. Like, I certainly don't need to explain to kindergartners at the beginning of the year that, what we're doing is warming up these muscles and I'm trying to get you in head voice instead of chest voice.
See all
I don't
that
need to
stuff.
explain any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but it is certainly something that as they grow older that they absolutely can know about.
Yeah.
So part of it's just when they learn that kind of thing.
Right. And my mom, I know, has been talking to me a lot about doing music games, especially for the kid.
Sure.
And that's something that I've definitely been fighting really hard because it just seems dumb and stupid and like, but she keeps reminding me that these kids, they don't think it's stupid. Yeah. You know, this little silly game that you feel like a turd, you know, you're an adult doing this, like, even the siren sounds, I know where the choir guys do that to get, you know, but it's not even... Because my mom, with dealing with the special ed kids so young, she's doing the like siren soundy kind of things, but only because it's fun. And that's the grab 'em part, you know, where they're doing this fun little thing with their voice and they have fun in music class, and then eventually we get to some actual real like stuff, you know, in your class, but you're trying to get them with the game. And do you think that's really important to use like a lot of game kind of stuff with the little kids?
Yeah, so like one of the philosophies then is that like children learn best in an environment of play, basically, you know, which a lot of the time might be in a game, and some of the element of play is like not musical in itself, you know, that there's just a game and you happen to be making music and it all fits together.
Right.
But then there's other things where, like, for instance, the play is I'm taking a musical concept and I'm experimenting with it during an improvisation, and like that's how I'm playing, you know. Like Wynton Marsalis talks about, like, you know, when you're dribbling the basketball and at first it's hard just to get it going, but then after a while you mix it up and you know, you're just playing around with it, experimenting, like same kind of thing. And then as far as the like the aspect you were talking about a minute ago, James Galway's book, The Inner Game of Music, like he talks about he's got the triangle.
Else talk about
yeah,
that.
Actually, I think Scotty brought it up on your show too.
Yeah.
And like I actually have that triangle in my room. It's part of our like mission statement for music. I teach at a school that we do the 7 habits, and each class is supposed to have a mission statement. And ours is that you know, we're going to perform, experience, and learn by making music together. So that's our mission. And so the perform part, you know, is sounding good, looking good when you're dancing, all those things.
Right.
Experience is having a great time, which I thought, you know, about like maybe I should put the word fun there. But for the little kids, you know, that might make more sense. For the older kids especially, I tell them, you know, the experience isn't necessarily just the fun thing. Like sometimes we will sing a sad song and you need to like get that, you know, emotion into it. Or we're going to sing a spooky song or scary song and it's not exactly fun in the same way as singing a silly song. So, you know, so I think that to answer that question essentially is that triangle kind of shifts a little bit sometimes, where sometimes you're doing more learning than, you know, obviously when you're really woodshedding something, then the performance sounds bad a lot of the time, you know. So I'll tell the kids that, like, all right, we're working on this thing right now. Brand new finger on recorder, whatever it is, you know, here's a new chord on the guitar. Like, you're going to sound bad today for quite a while, and you're going to sound a little bit bad the next time, and, you know, after a few lessons, like, we're going to have it down super solid, and I expect it to sound good then, you know. And, you know, hey, it's not going to be quite as much fun when you're first learning this. We're going to woodshed it a little bit, but then after that, like, we're going to jump back into the song, you know, and there it is. It's going to be more fun. And the trick for some of that is to just try and make that part as short as possible and then bring it into something musical as soon as possible. So even if you have like a little exercise kind of thing you're doing, somehow try and fit that into a song. Like it might be that you sing a song and then for the B section, they're working on that other little thing. And so it fits it into something musical, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like in elementary, a lot of the time we use a lot of rondos where we'll have an A section and then for the B section, they'll be working on this thing, or it'll be a small group perform something they've created, or everybody improvises, or different people improvise, you know, so a lot of the time that gives them a chance to do something musical and then also be working on the learning part at the same time. And ideally then that experience is still musical, you know, basically fun.
Right. And I'm obsessed with it, even right there. Like I would know, okay, the purpose for doing this is to make them understand like form of music, right? That there's not just one section and this song has X, Y, and Z structure to it. And I would want to sit there and like explain why we're doing this and and I just need to need to learn it, you know. I mean, you need to do a tiny bit, but
it's just that the first time we do a rondo, then I don't explain it, you know, and then after we've done rondos plenty of times, then it's like, hey, by the way, this is called a rondo, something different, maybe, and we, you know, a lot of times
you wouldn't linger on that, right? I mean, you say they need to know, but you
I mean, we don't.
See, I would
want
to linger to it just for no reason, you know, just because I feel like.
If it's experiential, then a lot of the time you don't have to spend as much time on it anyway. Like for instance, during the A section, everybody does the same movement together that we've made up as a group. But during the B section, just this group does a movement that's different. And during the C, another group does a movement that's different that they created. And you know, you find some way to show through the music, through the movement to match the music in each section, and then you put it on the board A, B, A, C, A, and then you're like, oh, by the way, your part is the C section, your part is B, and then everybody knows, oh, okay, I get it, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time talking about it because you're doing it, they get it real quick that way.
Yeah, that's cool. I found too with little kids that I'm having to adjust my analogies too, because they really get I think they understand analogies for sure, but like using more like food and animals and stuff like and then adults you're talking about stuff. Like romance, and I mean you're just changing your descriptions of things, and I found I'm trying to do that better too. Or like a lot of late elementary definitely understand like sports analogies if they played some baseball or something. I mean, you got to. That was just another thing that I had to like re-twist up in my mind. I'm like, I can't. They've never dated. They don't know what I'm talking about. I got to talk about like hot dogs and stuff. That was just another. I just have a lot of trouble. I've been trying to get better. You mentioned the movement stuff too, which is interesting. Because my mom would do a lot of movement stuff in her class where, okay, we jump up and down on this part, and then this part you turn around, and this part, and that stuff, I think I'd be not in the minority here where a lot of us see that as just really, really dumb and silly. I'm like, why are we doing that? But to me, that's the grab 'em. So that's because they're gonna sit here like for a half an hour and be perfectly behaved, and they're not. I'm like, dude, you gotta like get them. It's not natural,
first of all.
It's not natural.
Just sitting for a long period of time. I mean, certainly kids do it when they're watching TV and movies and things like that. But in general, I mean, kids need to be up moving around a lot. It's just something that they need. I mean, frankly, adults too. We need a lot more than most adults do. And also, I mean, part of the catch there is, you just have to make sure that it is expressive. Laban, Laban, was real popular for concepts about how he broke things down. Like you were talking about before, like what are the things before those things?
Yeah.
And so he broke down and came up with a great system, and which a lot of ORF teachers have used. Like you were talking before about Suzuki.
Yeah.
And then, so like, a lot of the contemporary stuff, Orff Schulwerk from Karl Orff, and then Kadai, Zoltan Kadai. So like those are big pedagogies and philosophies of music that are very similar in a lot of ways, and very similar too with Suzuki, especially in that concept we were talking earlier about sound before symbol. So like before you're introducing all the reading, like that they can make the music in the first place. But anyway, so for anybody that wants to learn more about some of the concepts we're talking about, looking up some info about those particularly would be great. Another book I was just thinking about too, ABCs of Music. Doug Goodkin, and it reminded me because one of them was F for fun, and it's kind of like one of his pet peeves. Everybody's like fun, and he's like, well, what is fun, and if you look up definitions of fun and stuff, you're like, yeah, I mean, like it's something that's like
really abstract,
not important even,
what? But
a lot of the time it's like something that
I've talked
it's
about
not even
that.
important. It's like, no, this is important, and it's not just fun. It's also these other things. It's basically like an aesthetic experience. So that's the way I look at it. Like, okay, I need to try and give my students an aesthetic experience every time they come to music class. But then they also need to learn something, whether that is explicit, like, oh, now I know this new concept, or now I've just got a better vocabulary for rhythm and pitch, and or the same thing about the performing thing. Like every time they come, they need to sound good at something too, which is part of the experience. So that perform, experience, learn thing is just like a good framework for me all the time to think about learning. My own learning too, I use it for basically like everything, not just music. One of the great things about learning music and learning how to learn music then is that a lot of those concepts fit for everything else that you're doing. Anytime that you're learning anything as a human being, it's like the same kind of thing. Even the movement aspect, just adding that kinesthetic to something else that you're learning can boost that learning and make it more interesting and more memorable, like all those things.
Yeah, you talked about the stuff that's fun. I always use like Schindler's List as an example. I mean, playing that music is not fun, it's not the same kind of fun, but it's the trying to get it perfect sort of as a symphony player or something is like that. It's not fun, but you want to get it perfect. That it's the challenge of it is sort of in the the ballpark of fun, you have to change your definition, but you talked about the fun and then the work. That I think that's the one of these three hugest hardest things about teachers is teaching is to find that balance, is that you can't just Nazi drill sergeant them, you just can't, but at the same time, if you just you just make it fun, then they're, you know, they're not any good. You know,
Sure,
I mean,
yeah.
you need it. And so I always find a trouble with that, of finding that balance, especially for the high schoolers or whatever, of,
Yeah.
you know, when I know that they could probably take me, or they could probably handle me pushing them a little bit, but keeping that fun there so they want to come back, you know, and find. And I always struggle with the understanding with the self-esteem-y kinds of stuff, where a lot of the self-esteem, I would argue, comes from not just me telling you you're good, but you feeling it, that I can play this 2-page tune now.
Oh, yeah.
And I can feel that I'm doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So my argument would always be like, but until you get there, we have to do some drills. Like you have to go through this stuff to be able to even put your third finger perfectly right there. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. And so I always struggle with what's going to make them come back. And some of the other teachers that I've heard, oh, just be nice, you know, is the only way in the games, you know. And I'm like, man, I don't know. Like the 8th graders that stick around, I mean, I think that they're feeling that they've played about 3 or 4 years now, and they can like play a 2-page tune, and they can feel that they're doing something. So I don't know, and this is a really, you know, really rough question, but where, you know, I mean, where exactly is that balance of giving it's a
that
hard
is one of the hard
question,
things,
and, you know,
that's one of the hard things as a teacher. It's like that same performance experience learn thing, where like what I tell my students then is the learning part. Sometimes when I'm like, this is hard, or they'll tell me like, this is hard. Yeah, absolutely, it's hard. PE teacher I used to work with always said, and I've stolen this from him, like, if it was easy, everybody would do it, you know. Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, but most people can't play guitar, but when you leave 5th grade, you can, you know. But it wasn't easy. Yeah, I mean, when I'm gonna teach you a new chord, yep, at first it's gonna be hard, and it gets easier. I explained to them some of the brain research about, like, you know, making connections in your brain, show them a picture and everything about dendrites, and how basically, you know, your brain is figuring out, like, oh, the first time that you say, oh, I'm going to move this finger, you know, at first, you know, you might be like, your brain's like, oh, I'm moving these two together, oh, I'm doing it, you know. But basically, you know, yeah, you got to do that thousands of times, and once you've done it thousands of times, then your brain's starting to go, oh, you know, I need to just make this a better connection between these parts, to say, zoom, you know, just makes it happen immediately. You don't even have to think about it anymore. So at first, it's hard, but if you just do it enough times, then your brain starts to make that connection to say, no. You keep doing this over and over and over again. I don't want to have to keep trying to figure out how to get from here to here. I'm just going to make a connection between the two, done, bam, that finger moves. So, you know, I tell them some of those things. And yeah, even that, like games, when we're, for instance, first playing recorder, and they have to be able to move just their third finger, which is, you know, the trickiest one to do, then we just do games where we're like keeping the beat along with something, you know. At first I'll do like 8 on each finger, but it's along the music, and just kind of making it fun and silly as we go, and then tell them, all right, that's your homework, go home and practice that. And when your parents look at you and go, what are you doing? You say, I'm doing my homework, you know. And they're like, you know, just make it fun as far as that goes. And I have so many kids come back then over the next several weeks before we're playing recorder, and they're like, yeah, watch, I got this, you know, I've been practicing. And, you know, they're excited about it. So part of it is just making that kind of stuff fun. And I tell them, too, as far as the learning part goes, look, you know, yeah, if you just came in here for kindergarten, you left in 5th grade, and all we did was say, oh, we're going to have fun every time, and we're going to do stuff that sounds really good, then in 5th grade, we'd still be singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and going on a bear hunt, and, you know, like, no, you need to leave 5th grade, you know, singing, you know, difficult music and harmony. You know, you need to leave 5th grade playing difficult rhythms where everybody's got something different going on all at once. Like, this is, yeah, it's not easy, you know. Once again, if it was, everybody would. And which is honestly, too, part of the reason I got into, well, that is the reason I got into music education in the first place, was that our society is just not musically we don't participate as a society in music making like basically humans used to for like all of human history until very recently. You know, when you look at the big grand scheme of things, you know, all humans forever until just recently, as in just recently, maybe you might say hundreds of years, but still, you know, the last 100 years with recording, for sure, a lot of people now are just like, oh, okay, it's a commodity, I buy this thing and I listen to it. But before that, you know, yeah, people were either all singing along, playing instruments together, dancing, like that was just something that communally just everybody did. In like pretty much every society, you know? Well, I'm sure every society.
That's interesting how many, because I mean, everybody was going to church. We sang all at church. Everybody when they went to a party, they were all dancing. That's a good point. Where we've lost that. We've lost that.
If you think about villages, they absolutely, like, everybody would know the dances and do them together. It's not like you would necessarily, if you think way back, it's not like somebody was hiring a band or something like that. It was just, no, everybody in the community knew, like, hey, these people play some music while everybody else can dance, and, you know, we sing a lot of songs together, and, you know, that's just how it would be. If you think, I mean, there are still places in the world where that's still the norm, where, you know, people do work songs, and those kids grow up musical, and they don't have a music teacher. You know, they just grow up because, you know, they're on their mom's back while mom is pounding the beat and singing a song. And of course, like, you know, by the time they can walk, like, they're really solid at that beat because they've been feeling it and they've been hearing it, and then, you know, there's nothing
I've
to
been
do.
saying, I'm a huge fan of Suzuki because I did it, but that's one of the things that they say is if you go listen to music all day, I mean, you're gonna start osmosising a whole lot of stuff, you know, and that's why they make you go. You know, you have your first book, and they make you go listen to all these songs before you even think about trying to play them. Yeah. You know, and you're listening to them for 2 months, so you've heard the song 100 times easy. You know, by that, and then you start playing that song, but here in another 2 months when you're now at Go Talent Roadie and Oh Come Little Children or whatever song, you know, that, well, now you've listened to that song another 100 times before you get to this one, and that's something that I wish that we would do more in the public schools, like for orchestra, and I don't even know how they would do that. I mean, or just encourage more to just sit there and listen to a lot of music, because we just kind of play, and I don't know how we would really do that in orchestra. I mean, you get
in elementary usually
three half an hours a week, you know, I mean, so you can't just take the whole time sitting there listening to music.
In general music, the way we work it in is movement, you know. That's the way.
But you're playing something on the CD and they're moving, so you're sitting there and blaring it in their ear.
They're listening to a classic piece of classical music, you know, and during that same time, you know, they're hearing this and it's great music, and then they're creating movement to it, or I'm giving them movement for some of it, you know, all those kind of things. So a lot of the time, you know, I mean, and orchestra teachers could do the same thing, especially if they came from a background in elementary where they were used to that, and saying like, okay, we're going to be doing movement during this so you can hear it.
Right.
You know, part of the beauty of it too is a lot of music learning really is mental practice, and especially when you're away from your instrument or something, to be able to mentally practice is really powerful. So once you do get to the point where you're telling kids about certain concepts, and you're, you know, like, oh, hey, by the way, these pitches we've sang so many times, we've played on instruments and things, maybe on mallets or what have you, that's me right. Oh, listen, you know, here, where can we find it in this song? And then they find it in that song.
Right.
You know, I mean,
see those connections.
Some of it's amazing. You just don't expect it. Where one year, for instance, at the end of the school year, we had all the kids together in the gym, and the PE teacher was teaching some dances, and they might be like country line dances and things. And then for one of them, he did Macarena, and, you know, I had a second grader that was like so excited and came up to me as soon as we got done with Macarena. You know, my first instinct is to be like, this better be important. You should be back in your spot right now. We're all trying to do something together, you know. But he's like, Macarena, it's so me do, and I was like, oh yeah, it is. It's like so me do, you know.
And that feels good, right?
He's so
as a
excited,
teacher, you know. That feels,
you know. He found it in that pop song, and pop songs have those same, you know, concepts that we're teaching all the time with, especially with pitches. So many of them are pentatonic, and you know, generally a lot of people start with the pentatonic scale when they're teaching, you know, pitches of solfege, or especially with improvisation, especially because with the pentatonic scale, it's, you know, you can kind of get to that, like, you know, not as many chances to have wrong notes, or not as discordant if several people are improvising at the same time with pentatonic scale. So, and it's just all over the place in pop music, so the kids can pick that out once they, you know, get used to that. Oh yeah,
totally.
Those concepts.
Well, that's really cool, man, and I know that we need a lot of younger or teachers that are good with young kids, you know, and I think it's a special kind of person that it's a different animal. It's a different animal teaching kindergartners as opposed to 11th graders. I mean, it's just totally different, and I'm glad you really enjoy that. On a different note, one thing that I've been thinking about lately is thinking about all of us as musicians and how we deal with life of kind of making money and finding work and all that kind of stuff. And I think both of us are lucky and also not lucky that we love teaching so much, that we have this kind of day gig, I guess, you know, of the giggers, you know, and they're trying to scrounge around for 16 gigs a month or something, or 8 gigs a month, and it's just not there, and then they're like, okay, well, what do I do now? And you're lucky to have, or again, lucky and not lucky, to be good at teaching. And so and for me, teaching privately, and then I can also do my gigs sort of on the side instead of the teaching feeling like it's on the side.
Gotcha.
I guarantee that you feel like the teaching is the main and the gigs are extra instead of the other way around. Mm-hmm. And so, like, do you have any thoughts on just kind of the business side of music and dealing with, finding enough money to make a living, and what's your
well, yeah, as you were saying, I mean, for me, it is on the side. When I first started playing, the
gigging is on the side,
exactly, yeah. And earlier in my career, I needed the money more because the longer you teach, you move your way up the salary scale. But for me, it is just something where it's like, I really love doing this. I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to just play music on the side, Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's different. And I'm not like counting on, like you're saying, guys trying to get 16 gigs a month or whatever. I'm happy if at the end of the year, it averages out to about 1 a month. Some months we'll have 3 gigs, some months we'll have 0, and it all averages out just fine. That's fine with me. I actually don't want to play, every single weekend. Honestly, like, I wouldn't want to play 3 weekends a month, every month. So for me, it is just something I enjoy doing. And so that's part of the framework for me, that I have to keep that in mind the whole time, But yeah, as far as the business end of things, I would say then, and I'm only going to speak from somebody who doesn't have to just book tons of gigs all the time. For me, a big part of that is just to keep it enjoyable in every way that you can. Some of that for me is things like making my gear compact and easy to load everything up. Like, I have to load a PA because I'm the band leader. Yeah. So I've got a minivan that never has seats in it, and I load everything up there. But, we've got it down to where it's like, hey, we've got this stuff all on wheels, and then we can stack maybe this on top of it. We have, the subs are relatively small but put out plenty of power and they sound good, just things like that. And so, they're not that heavy. Just, little things like that can make a huge difference for me about how I feel about, doing my job. I mean, musicians like to joke about, playing's fun. What we get paid for is, setting up and tearing down. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, I mean, the playing part is fun, especially if you're doing something you love. Like my band, I love playing jazz, and during dinner, we play just instrumental jazz and we do old classic stuff, just great songs that the audience knows. Everybody's heard Girl from Ipanema. It's a great song though. The chord progression is so much fun to solo over, it's just great. And then, so as a band, we intentionally pick stuff that we like doing for that. And then during dance set, like same thing, we play such a wide variety, which is part of what's fun for me about it. Plus it's very marketable. There are bands that are like, we are this kind of band. We just play blues, or we just play funk, or we just play 80s, or whatever it is. And there's certainly a market for that. When you're going to play like weddings, like we do a lot of, or even corporate parties, it's great to have this huge variety of stuff because they see that and they can go, oh yeah, we like this. And, you have a wedding, you got everybody from little kids to, extremely old people, like everything in between. So it's great to have this wide variety for everybody. Yeah. And then you get to know certain songs that like everybody in that range loves too. So there's, there's something to be said for that. So, I mean, I don't know how helpful I'm being for somebody as far as the business part of that, but to me, those are like a lot of the keys. Plus just the making it fun part. I remember when I was first playing in, it was like the second funk band I played in after college. And we always played some songs that I was just like, man, these are just not quality songs. I hate to have to do this, sort of thing. And like the example I always have in my head was like, play that funky music, White Boy. And I was just like, oh my goodness.
Well, that's wedding funk, right? It's in the genre of wedding funk,
but I mean, even the lyrics, it's just
Brick
cringe,
House, right?
And Brick House, like some of those songs, everybody's tired of playing Mustang Sally, those kind of things. And but I mean, some of the songs just aren't that good quality in the first place. And it occurred to me at some point, okay, it's like, now I teach my kids be proactive, which is basically like the change your mindset to say like, I'm gonna have fun with this. So I remember the day that me and the saxophone player turned to each other, it's like, you know what, let's just have as much fun as possible with this song, even though it's just a cheeseball song that we neither of us really like. And now it's like, we don't play that in my band normally. Like, we have some songs that are only by request, like some of the ones we just mentioned, Brick House, for instance. But
that 20 that everybody hates to do,
only by request, and there's some. I think there are some in that list that I like playing, and the rest of my band probably does like playing that we usually do play. Don't Stop Believing, for instance. Like we play that like every night pretty much because I actually enjoy playing that song. It's fun.
Yeah, that song is growing on me. I didn't like anything 80s, but now
I used to hate that song.
But now I'm kind of.
I used to hate that song, but I absolutely love playing it. It's a lot of fun. Oh, and I play the keys, so that's kind of fun too. I mean, it is like a main part of the song. So I'm sure there's something to be said for sometimes like which part you have in a song. But even like I played for a year in a band just for fun. Like we just played out at some clubs and stuff. Nothing big, but I played drums for a year. A friend of mine was like, "Hey, you want to come play drums?" And I was like, "I'm not a very good drummer. I learned a little bit in college and everything like that." And I was like, "But I'll come audition with you guys. I promise I'll practice and I'll learn the stuff, but it does not hurt my feelings." If you're like, no, not too good. And sure enough, I showed up and played just okay. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we know you'll practice, we know you." And I was like, "All right, cool." So, but they're like, some of the songs you're just doing the same thing all the way through. And for me as a drummer, like I enjoyed saying, "Oh, I'm laying down a great groove for everybody. I'm not going to try and show off a field or anything." And especially because you get kind of tired sometimes for somebody that overplays, especially on an instrument like that. That's not your role in a lot of.
We've talked about that on many shows. Of mine.
There are bands where that is the drummer's role, but in general, that tends to not be. Exactly. And so sometimes you're just doing that same groove over and over with very little variation, and you just have to say like, "How can I make this fun?" Which to me, I learned a lot by doing that for a year because it actually helped open up my ears to hear everything else when I wasn't playing a pitched instrument, to where I felt like it helped me actually hear everybody else because I could focus on that in a different way that I wasn't producing a pitch to also hear, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, which we don't get to experience, like unless you move over to drums, and then you're not playing pitches, and you get to sit there and listen to all the pitches. Was it the Inner Game? There's one of the books that he talks about. You've got the duet going, like what you hear in your head and what you're producing, and you're trying to make those two things match. And I think by just not producing pitches on the drums, it was easier to like really tune into everything going on. Which as a trumpet player, I should be doing just as much. It's just it helped refine that skill, I think. Mm-hmm. You said a couple interesting things there. So one about the choosing of the songs in the band as the band leader. So I know I had an epiphany when I got to talk with Lonnie McFadden a little bit, and he sat down with me for a couple hours one time, and a really nice guy, but he was trying to remind me that it's like, as this 24-year-old, you think you're having this integrity, and I'm not gonna play the covers, and I'm only gonna do my originals. I'm not gonna do the Mustang Sally. He's like
common attitude.
And I kind of he didn't really say this exactly, but it occurred to me while I was talking to him, like, wait a second, I've got 500 CDs. I love cover tunes. What am I talking about? You know what I mean? Like, I'm an idiot. Yeah. I'm being not for real here,
One thing I've heard people say is my job is to play music other people want to hear. You know, and if that's Mustang Sally, sometimes it isn't, Like I said, in my band, there are ones that were like only by request, but if people want to hear it, we do. And I think that be proactive thing is a really big key to it, though. Like, it wasn't a song I was going to pick, but I'm going to have fun with it still. And the audience can tell that too, Right. Plus it's fun. One of the things I love about what I do is we play dance music, and we play for private parties. It's not like we're playing at some club where it depends on how many people show up or something. There are people there for sure, and they came to have a good time for sure. They're planning on dancing, So we always have a great crowd basically because of what I do. Which is one of the things I would tell people too, man, if you like dance music, then like playing in a wedding band is a great way to go. I mean, I think that some people might, as a musician, like you were saying, that attitude just before, they might look down on that kind of thing, but man, it is super fun because I feed off their energy. The whole band does. Like, we play better when people are dancing, and then it's just a nice virtuous cycle where then they dance better, and it just keeps on going back and forth, and like the energy in the room is just great, which is one of the things I love about live music as opposed to like somebody spinning CDs or records or whatever as a DJ, is that there's just that interaction that really drives things. Oh yeah, and like, so when I was thinking about my band, it was like kind of a 70s 90s rock kind of thing, and so I'm like, okay, I don't have to pick the brick houses. I can take Ramblin' Man or Money, Pink Floyd, or I can think there's some songs here that I'm not gonna feel like the performing monkey, but that are gonna be challenging enough and fun, and they're gonna be bar friendly, not just doing ballads the entire set, Sure. And so, for example, like, and I've said this before on the show, when I'm like, okay, Riders on the Storm is a cool song, well known, but I don't know if it's super bar friendly. Okay.
You know, maybe I need to make that the ballad for the set because it's kind of ballady. It's slow indoors and
know your audience. That kind
you
of
kind
thing.
of know your audience, and so that kind of helped me think about songs because on both sides, the people that are if the spectrum, you know, if they're too worried about the audience, they're gonna pick a bunch of lame stuff that only the audience cares about, and you're just like, all right, Mustang Sally again, but the bebop guys can go way too far and go like, man, screw the audience. You know, I need to play as hard a jazz as I can possibly play, you know, for us. And this is for us and not for them. And I don't care about you as the public. And I think there's a balance there. I think you can still find some stuff that is, and then you said something else too about, oh yeah, and then when you're up playing with a song, but it is one of those that you maybe don't like, I agree with you that you've got to take this mentality that I'm gonna make this song as great as it can. I hate it, but I'm gonna make it as great. I'm gonna find some way to make that song really. I'm gonna put in a little mini improv on these little ends of phrases, or I'm gonna find something here. Something to improve the song. Mm-hmm. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, gosh, there's several things that you said I'd love to chime in. But yeah, the improve the song. A lot of the time, people, you know, I take it as a big compliment when somebody comes up and says, "Wow, you played that and it sounded just like the original." Mm. But a lot of the time, we're intentionally doing things to make it sound better than the original. You know, and a lot of people will tell me that too. They'll say, you know, "Oh wow, your version I liked even better." You know, one of my friends, he tells me that he puts on his on his iPhone all of our live recordings. And that a lot of the time he'll listen to it and then listen to the original and go, wow, yeah, I really like yours better. And then one time it just happened because he had it on shuffle that like our version of Car Wash he listened to, and then he listened to the original, just happened to pop up right after, and he was like, oh man, your version of Car Wash was so much more fun, you know? So yeah, we try to. And a lot of the time it could be simple things like we add more vocal harmonies because we've got 5 people singing. So, you know, we can fatten up a lot of vocal harmonies and things. You know, there's all kinds of things you can do to it. I mean, the saxophone player we play with is just an incredible musician, a better musician than I am. So we throw in, you know, sax on a lot of things that wouldn't have sax otherwise. I like our version. Rolling the Deep, for instance. Like, I love playing that song. We threw in a guitar solo and a sax solo in the middle of that song, and it just it makes the song really build right before it cuts back off to just the claps and the like, you know, just not much going on kind of thing. Just little things like that you can take the song and say, I'm going to do this other thing with it, you know. And when people are dancing, man, that's huge. You just, you know, they love the original song already, but now you throw in this section where it really, you know, now you've got this rock and guitar solo that we then push right into a sax solo where like the drum group changes and we go even bigger on it, you know, which the audience is not expecting that. Like, it already sounds like, wow, there's somebody wailing on guitar with distortion, and then all of a sudden somebody's wailing on the saxophone and the whole rhythm section's backing them up, like, you know, they know what to do to make it just really big. And then you just take that and just cut it right off to where now it's the breakdown section, and like, yeah, as an audience member, somebody dancing, like that's way better than the original. You know, and that probably wouldn't have been the right choice for a single cut that was supposed to be played on the radio. So you know, there's that's that know your audience thing. You know, you got to figure out like, how can I make this work for what we're doing. And there's lots of songs that, you know, we've tried, like you're talking about, it's more of a ballad, like that kind of thing, where there's songs that you just go, you know, how is this going to fit in? Like, will this work as a ballad, or are people going to dance to it, you know? And, you know, it's hard to know. With what I do, a lot of songs that work real well are ones that people know the lyrics and like to sing along to, you know. Give me the Beat Boys and Free My Soul and Wanna Get Lost in Your Rock. Yeah, it's great, you know? You know, or like we were talking about before, with Don't Stop Believing or something, you know. I Will Survive, you know. And some of those, I mean, like, people are tired. A lot of people are tired of playing I Will Survive or Don't Stop Believing. I love playing both of them because the audience just has so much fun with them, and, you know.
At least they have multiple chords in them.
Oh yeah, the chord progression's pretty fun for I Will Survive. You know, it's basically the jazz progression of, you know, moving up by fourths the whole way through. And
the one in our band that absolutely drives me nuts is the ba ba ba.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
What is that song?
Well, yeah, we play that one too.
Yeah, that one's the one that I'm like, man, if we never played this again, I'd be very.
So good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff where I'm just.
We don't normally play that one.
That's in the Mustang Sally area where you have that crowd, and then the crowd, and they're having so much fun. Oh, this is so great, you know. It's
that's not on our every gig list, but we do play that one every few gigs probably. That we'll just call the song.
Sweet Caroline. That's the name of it. Yeah.
Another thing we do that I would suggest to anybody that's like, I'd like to play private parties, weddings, anything people are dancing like that and everything is don't create a set list. Just you call songs on the fly, but everybody has to know the songs well enough. Plus, they have to be able to just jump right in because you want it to be like a DJ where the last chord is still holding and I'm counting off the next song and then boom, we're right into it. Because I mean, it may not seem like very long in the bandstand, but if you got 5 seconds of dead silence and everybody was dancing and they're like, okay, people start leaving the dance floor. So like you got to go right into the next thing.
Right.
A lot of the time too, it like will intentionally have songs where only one instrument starts, so that like I can just tell the bass player, my girl, and he's like, got it, and like he's the only one playing it first, and then we all come in. And some songs it originally wasn't supposed to be one person playing, and we're just like, hey, why don't we just start this with just guitar, just drums, just keys, whatever it is, so that like we can just go right into it.
Right into the next
the audience is like, the dancers, they're not like, oh no, well I guess I'm gonna take a break now. They're like, oh yeah, we're still going.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And so with the fun kind of idea of being in band and making it fun, I've found that kind of going back to the day gig and choosing your band, obviously us musicians talk to each other all the time, and we're all, we're always constantly, oh man, this band, and then I was in this project, and these guys suck, and we're all just yapping to each other. But I found that like when you have your day gig, that lets up on your on your gigging, like we talked about, where you don't have to have so much, like, because there's all these pressures. There's the money pressure, and then you have your kind of soul pressure, where I'm in this band and I hate it, and it's and then
you can't do that.
And then but I would think that having the day gig because we all know these people that came out of college, right? And so we're like deep in this, like emotionally, and career wise. And so a lot of these guys want to come out and be this, I'm a gigger, I'm in the scene, and they're basically taking anything that comes to them because I need to get that 10 gigs a month.
Gotcha.
And so, but for somebody like yourself, or somebody who teaches privately, or somebody who has like a church directorship gig, they have this whole other thing where they work at full time at UPS or something, and they have this full time gig.
It's not your main thing.
And then now they can sit here and be really. And here's my like question for you, I guess, is like, everybody has a different deal breaker in a band, which I've been kind of fascinated by. Like, what's your deal? You're in a group, and like for some people it might be the band leader's just screaming at us all the time. You guys aren't doing this right, do this. And then another guy it might be that I'm playing too many Mustang Sallies. Everybody's nice, but it's just too many stupid.
So I think
what's your deal breaker?
I know where you're going on some of these things. I think I have a few tips as far as that goes. Which is the number one thing for that whole concept of everything you just put out there is make sure that everybody's on the same page and has the same goals in the band. So the reason mine works is because we don't all have to say we have to have all these gigs for this to happen. The reason I've been able to consistently have the same people in my band is because we are all on the same page there. A lot of those kind of bands that like mine, the gigs start to dry up and somebody jumps ship and they go play another band that plays almost all the same songs or something, right? So mine's different that way, where we know like, we don't have anything in the month of August. Like, we literally don't have anything this month. We had 3 gigs last month, nothing this month. But nobody in the band is like, well, I didn't get anything this month, I'm gonna start playing with another band. We're all like, yeah, that's fine, it all works. Another thing I would say is, and maybe some people just can't afford to be picky about it, but there's no need, especially if you're in a situation like me where you have a day gig, there's no need to play with somebody who's yelling. There's no need. I've played, for short periods of time with some guys that would get in huge arguments, and just literally, like you said, yelling. And sometimes they were just arguing like it was the biggest thing about what the intro to the song should be, and you're just like, man. Right. So in my band, it's very democratic. I'm technically the leader, but I think I know everybody would agree that we make all our musical decisions democratically, where we come to a consensus on like, how should we do this. Sometimes somebody throws out an idea, and then the other people say, well, here's why I think it's a bad idea, and it's all fine, and nobody's feelings are hurt or anything. I think there's a lot to be said for being able to have that kind of relationship to where you can disagree about things and then come to a consensus later where everybody agrees that that was the best choice.
Yeah, I agree. Like that is kind of a whole deal of being on the same page, because it's like there's a bunch of same pages. There's the same page kind of musically where you're choosing certain songs. We're gonna be obviously a wedding dance band and we need to play this type of stuff. Then you have this other band where we want to be very, very artsy, and we're going to be super creative. We're going to definitely play these songs not like the original on purpose, you know, like, you know. And then you have the whole, again, now back to the business side of it of, are we going to be a, let's try to hustle pretty hard and get 4 to 5 gigs a month, you know, let's be a gigging band, or, you know, this is not that serious. If we don't get you know, if we don't only get one this month,
it's all right.
Yeah, and that's definitely been I'll just speak for myself. I talked to you before we started about a band when in college where we were not on the same page with that stuff. You know, I wanted to start pushing, and they were like, ambition is not for us. You know, my band guy literally said that to me, and
there you go.
He wasn't wrong. You know, I was mad that he said that, but I realized later. Then the next band that I was in a, you know, we weren't gigging every weekend, but it was 3 a month, and they had a full email list that they sent out with calendar every month. I mean, and it was for 58 to 70. I mean, there was an older crowd. They were playing old country, but all of their fans were really organized. You know, I mean, they were just old people, and they have their calendars, but they were like, and then you just said, I mean, in and out of the gig was like boom, boom. I mean, they had everything locked down. You know, I mean, they were professionals, and and so it was really cool that I was like, okay, yeah, all of these guys have a day gig, but I'm like. And that was a funny thing for me, because that was my first band with the knucklehead college kids. We were all 24-year-olds, you know. I'm like, I got into this band. I'm like, oh, this is not what this always has to be. It could be this, you know, and not always this, but this isn't all the time, you know. Like, every band doesn't work this way, where it's a bunch of, you know, complete knuckleheads, and they're, you know, and they have no discipline, and they're all creative, and, you know, don't hurt my flow by all this organization and all this serious talk, you know, instead, you know, you get it. So I don't know. That was
and for somebody that just wants to play for fun, then there's nothing wrong with that. If you got like 4 people that want to get together every week and just write songs together for fun, and they're not worried about anything else, then great. I mean, the thing is like, none of this has to be for money. You know, it doesn't have to be for any of this other stuff. I mean, we're just talking about it because we're both professional musicians, and a lot of people probably watching are, but I mean, you don't have to be. And then anybody that is watching that says like, you know, I really love playing, maybe I should go play and get these gigs, blah blah blah. I mean, you can just play, or, you know, it doesn't even have to be. Some of my friends, they just throw a jam session like every Thursday, and they play like old country and old rock, a bunch of songs I never heard of and stuff. They have lots of people that come out every single Thursday, and they play for hours. It's just for fun, you know. I mean, that's a great way to go, and that's the kind of thing I'd like to see more of in our society in general. Like I was talking about the whole philosophy thing, you know. And yeah, you were talking about the goals again for people in the band and what their thing is. Like, nobody in my band has any inkling that like, oh, this is going to become a full-time gig. No, we're not worried about it. And we're also not like, you know, or I'm going to become famous for this or something. You know, you get people that like, you know, laymen who a lot of the time be like, oh, well, great, you got this band, all, you know, maybe you'll make it big. No, we're a cover band. We play weddings. There's nothing to do with that.
They don't understand, you know.
No, nobody wants to, you know. I mean, like, I literally don't want to, you know. It's like, no, I like what I do. I'd rather teach music than be a famous, you know, musician. That's what I want to do, you know. But I love playing for people.
And we talked about that a minute ago too, of the changing your outlook, and that was the false hope of, you know, I'm going to become Aerosmith, etc., you know, when you're 21, you know, and then you realize that I kind of like this teaching stuff, and you're like, well, maybe that's a silly goal, you know, that one, you know, 0.01% of the people get to do, you know, so maybe this is a better idea.
The lifestyle is radically different. I mean, even if you're just playing for your full-time gig, your lifestyle is way different than, you know, if you're teaching in a public school, you know, it's a totally different thing. So, you know, you got to consider that type of thing. Like, what is it? What do you want your life to look like in general outside of your playing even, you know, which, you know, are you off in the evenings, or are you playing every night? You know, like, those are legitimate questions. I mean, part of the reason why I don't want to play every weekend is because I want to do a lot of other fun stuff on the weekends, you know, so.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that's really cool, man. So, like, I don't know, to finish up here, talk a little bit more specifically about kind of some trumpet stuff more. Like, so here's a question. So what is even a layman's, like, guitar player or a regular person, what is something that's really, like, challenging about trumpet that a regular person wouldn't know.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, so go listen to people playing live where there's trumpet or trumpets, and I think that a lot of the time, even guys who are great players, you can go listen to, like, say, a big band or something like that. If it's not, Count Basie band or something, you're not going to hear raw notes there. But
Right.
a lot of the time, you will hear more raw notes in the trumpets than anything else. It is just crazy, but it honestly is just, it's a weird instrument as far as that goes.
When they go up like way high.
Yeah, you hear people cracking notes more than you'll hear on, like, you will not hear a saxophone player do it all night long, and you'll hear it happen a whole bunch in the trumpet section, and it is a difficult instrument in that respect, I mean, like French horn, it's amazing. Like,
see, that's what I always thought. I thought French horn would be harder than trumpet because you gotta. So tell me if I'm correct here.
They're very similar.
Do you have to adjust your pitch like all the time with that, or is it the same on trumpet?
It's a weird deal because basically, especially you said they go up high. As you get up higher, the notes basically get closer together. It's kind of similar in a way that, like, as you go up a fretboard or you go up, that the notes your fingers are physically closer. It's kind of similar to that because it goes by the harmonic series. So, like, on a trumpet, you'd have like C, G, C, E, G. Out of tune B flat that nobody ever plays, and then a C. But then after that, you start getting like a scale. It's like, C, D, E, a G. There's kind of like an out of tune F, F sharp in there, So, so long story short, there, man, it is a weird instrument as far as that goes. And I don't know, I've thought about this before, like, why is it that, I'll hear French horn played a lot of the time and not hear anybody crack a note, But even if I go out to, say, like
high schoolers crack
musical.
notes.
Oh, I mean, professionals. You go see a professional musical a lot of the time, and you will hear the trumpet player missing notes. It is a weird instrument as far as that goes. And like, I said I played just as much bass in college, and I played all this other stuff, like, I have no problems playing a 4-hour gig, not missing a single note on the bass, and sometimes playing some really tough stuff. Like in the rock band I played in, we used to play La Villa Strangiata, for instance, where it had like this. It was like, and I was like, oh yeah, fine, I got that, and I can play that every time. But like still, I'll miss notes, like especially you said once I go above the staff on the trumpet. So there's something about it, man.
Is there something with the air maybe?
Air is the main thing.
Because like I went to tuba because in college we did that, play all the instruments for a music ed degree.
Yeah.
And they were talking about definitely flute, and I always say the story because they'll even have a random trombone player and they're trying flute, and then all of a sudden they're kind of like all of a sudden they start.
That's
like
because of efficiency.
Yeah.
So like they're wasting a lot of air.
Right. Yeah.
What happens actually on trumpet is the same thing. So generally people waste a lot of air and aren't very efficient when they play the trumpet. Which usually the advice that you're given is the exact what you should not do. So band directors and like people teaching private lessons, they'll tell people over and over, more air, more air, more air. On trumpet, what you really want to do is use as little air as possible to create that vibration, because it's not the air traveling through the trumpet, it's a vibration traveling through the trumpet, Like, if you think about it, you literally wouldn't even have to be pushing air through the thing. If you just have something that makes a vibration and you send it through there and it's the right pitch, it just sets up a standing wave inside the instrument. That's it. So the real trick to it actually is using as little air. There's a guy named Jim Manley in St. Louis. He's known for being a screamer. Although now, since he's basically retired, he's like, oh, once I turned 60, I said I was only going to play jazz, by which he means like small combos, playing, literally while people are eating dinner.
Right.
And so like he's just playing like keys, trumpet. Nobody wants to hear tons of screaming over that. Before that he would play big band stuff and funk, where he'd play tons of high notes and everything like that. So I took lessons with him, totally changed the way I approached the trumpet 20 years ago. And yeah, the real key is actually using less air and being so efficient about it.
Right.
People they get so worried about embouchure, which I was probably in the minority of people who actually did need to change my embouchure. I learned that from Winton, actually, when Marcellus pointed out that if the ring of the mouthpiece is in the pink, like when you're done playing trumpet, you always see a little indentation from where it's been. If that is totally in the pink part, then you're gonna have problems with endurance, which I did. So I changed my my embouchure where instead of like the top lip totally spreading out, it was all in the pink and everything, to where and now I play a pretty darn small mouthpiece, and it totally fits within there, so I don't have those endurance problems. But I don't stress at all about like trying to get my embouchure just right anymore. Like there was a time where I worried about that kind of thing, but basically I just changed my embouchure. Now it's just kind of wherever it goes, I'm not worried about. It's all about the error that I'm worried about.
Yeah, I heard that somebody talking about that recently with singing too, because that it's the same problem. Is that like
Support,
it's not that you're using a lot of air, it's that you're not doing it right. You're not doing it efficiently, or using pushing through when you need to or backing off when you need to airwise, and that's something that I know that I do a pretty good job of using diaphragm, but I never think about exactly. Obviously, when you're just going and you know you need to spend a little bit more and hold it here, but I never think about that of the efficiency of the air. I'm just trying to get a lot.
Yeah, a lot of it man, singing is so much more complicated than I think a lot of people that, never really study it, do, and which, I didn't study a vocal major in college or anything, so I'm certainly not an expert at it, but there's so much to do with resonance and where you place that and vowels and everything that makes such a huge difference, once again on the efficiency especially, depending on where you are in your range, and then where the placement is. Oh man, it's basically it's the same kind of thing with the trumpet, where like it's just about getting that same kind of efficiency out of it.
Man, I mean,
weird
trumpet. Trumpet seems really cool. I'm a big fan of here's a question I had for you. So I'm just not a fan of trombone soloing.
I understand.
And
like I'm a bass player.
Like back in Louis'
myself...
days, the Louis days, I liked those solos. But when they start, I'm just like, man,
so I consider myself
right
primarily instruments being trumpet and bass, and I do not want to hear bass solos the vast majority of the time, and when they are, I want it to be melodic. Like, it drives me crazy sometimes when I'm like, oh gosh, you're trying to take a bass solo and you're doing something a saxophone player might play that would be really hip and like, rhythmically all over here and all this stuff where you're inside, outside or whatever. No, I don't want to hear that. I want to play you being like, boom, just, or just playing the groove with some fills, like just, those are my favorite.
Like when they go too notey, right? And it's muddy.
Oh,
right?
that
when
instrument.
Like bass, and especially when they're not up. When they go up on the thing, then you can sort of hear some of the notes, but when they're down and
that's why some of it has to do with tone quality. That's why I like the guys that are playing, lots of 16s all over the place that are great, like Victor Wooten or something like that. Those guys have like a big full range sound where you're not just like this big fundamental sound, which is what I generally prefer to play as a bassist, and not have the big full range with tons of mids and highs in it as well. There's there's a place for it. I love going to see Victor Wooten play. He's one of my favorite musicians, but in most bands, like that is not what you want to hear. I mean, even in jazz, like my favorite bass solo is probably Clifford Brown's Sandu. Like the guy just walks a nice bass line. He just walks a 12-bar blues, it's like that's the solo, while the drums just barely putting anything, the piano's barely putting anything behind it. And to me, like that is a great bass solo. Something I want to hear as a bass player, even like I would rather hear that than some of the crazy stuff that people play on it. So I understand. I think it's the same thing with trombone. Like I would be fine with trombone solos if they're playing something that you would sing as just like melodic, not like But I've got to fit in these bebop licks, and like my phrasing has to be this stuff across the bar, and I won't start on one, or whatever all these things are that they're doing. It's like no, play something you would sing. Like you said, like. Play like a Louis Armstrong solo, and if you listen to Louis Armstrong sing and play his solos, he's doing a lot of the same, like literally even the same phrases, he'll play the same thing on the trumpet that he did, there.
All right. Yeah, man. Well, we're probably about wrapping up here. Last thing I wanted to ask you, did you have any really fun gig that you've ever played, or any funny teaching moment, or any really, crazy thing that's ever happened to you in the music business?
I probably have better stuff if I thought about it some, but
PG-13 version.
Well, no, I mean I think about another thing, like from that inner game he talks about, like be a role player sometimes, say, I'm going to play it like so and so, I'm going to do this like so and so, right? And like that was an inner game of tennis, I think, originally, and he's like, intentionally play for a while like I'm the guy that rushes the net all the time, or intentionally play like I'm the guy that lays back and volleys just over and over, right? And so I remember one night we were playing this gig, and it was for just a convention that was in town, and they had a party at the last night of the convention, right? Social studies teachers, if I remember right, and we were playing a funk tune in E, and I just had this thought, like, what? On my trumpet solo, I'm just going to play a guitar solo. And I'm going to do all the guitaristic things that a guitar player would do. Yeah, like, I'm going to use, not just pentatonic scale and stuff like that, but I'm going to bend notes this certain way and the phrasing like you would if I was doing that, And it was wild because, like, it was the biggest reaction I'd ever gotten from a crowd dancing while I was playing trumpet. They just went crazy. And like, and then the rest of the night, there were like a couple people in front that were like, as soon as I would start a solo, they'd be like, he's going again. And like, there was this, this huge thing, whatever. And, it was a lesson for me in like, okay, yeah, it is definitely worthwhile to say, I'm going to play like this guy right now and just experiment with those ideas. But it's also worthwhile to say like, okay, what does this song need? It doesn't need, like we were saying before, this crazy bebop solo. What this song really needs is like I'm a guitar player just wailing on a blues scale,
Yeah, and that's funny. I don't know if you know Rod Fleeman, but he's a guitar player that really uses a lot of stuff. I mean, he's not just playing straight horn lines all day. He's using some bends, using some rock chords in his jazz solo, and I think that's really that. I mean, probably you just went into a different spot in your brain, obviously, and then you exploded with all of this new stuff that you never played before. I mean, that was probably a big part of it, just that alone. And I think that's really cool because we can kind of get plateau-y, with our soloing after a while, especially when you're in a dance band where you're playing a lot of the same songs and you all of a sudden start soloing the same way accidentally 19 gigs in a row. Yeah. And coming up with those new ideas sometimes can be
I wish somebody told me this when I was younger, but, I used to try and force things in, like on a gig. Like, oh, I'm working on this new thing, I better put it in, right? Like especially on improvisation, oh, I've been working on this thing, I'm going to do this. Well, no, I wish somebody would just made it more clear to me when I was younger. Like when you're woodshedding, that's when you really work on that stuff. When you go to play a solo and you're just improvising, ideally, basically, you're just not, thinking. Like that, the executive mind isn't doing anything.
Right.
It's just whatever comes out. But you've done it so many times, you basically, got this vocabulary all built in your head to where it just comes right out. You're not thinking about it. Like, what's that book? There's another book. It comes with like a meditation CD. Kenny Werner. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the name of the book, but Effortless Mastery. And he's basically all about like getting yourself in a meditative state while you play. Kind of like the flow concept and everything. I can't remember I can't even pronounce the researcher's name that talks about that all the time. But yeah, like you when you're actually performing, you need to be in that state where you're not really thinking as far as executive mind goes. But when you go to practice, then you say, oh, these are my weaknesses, or here's this new concept I want to start. I want to start putting the Crimea River lick in my solos more or something. But then once you've done that a bunch and you say, okay, I'm going to start with Crimea River and lead into something else. That's my practice today. Okay, today I'm going to play a phrase and I'm going to end it with Crimea River, whatever, But by the time you go to the gig, you don't try to do it at all, but it just starts popping out because once you're in that state and you've programmed yourself with that vocabulary, good stuff happens.
Then it just comes out naturally.
Yeah, and plus the groove is better. Like, when you're in that state, the feel, is just way better.
Yeah.
When you're trying to do anything, the trying part, really brings down the feel of the music, which is what it's really about. At the end of the day, like all that stuff we were talking about, it's still got to be like I'm making music and it's this aesthetic experience for me and hopefully for the people that are listening or dancing or singing with me or whatever. The other musicians in the band, like we got to all work together with each other to say, how can we create this aesthetic experience where we do sound good, but it feels good too.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. That's hard to do when you're coming up with new stuff to play, but you want to try something. I'll do that with like just one little phrase, like one that I've tried before that I have trouble with is when jazzers go and they'll be in like E and they'll da-ba-dee-dee, and then they move up that da-ba-da-dee, da-ba-da-dee, like, so that like would be an example of ones. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna play that one, I'll have it in my head. Okay, the move up a half step with the same crap I just played. Yeah. And so that's one that I'll try and then I'll like fumble it, but then I'll try it again sometime and maybe it'll be a little better.
But that's for the woodshed.
But that's for woodshedding, and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm Rob, I'm good enough. I'll just do it and I'll nail it, and sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, but because that's the other weird thing is playing in country bands where I'm a little different because I'm becoming a country player, really. I'm really more of a classical guy. Definitely I've done quite a bit of blues now with going to a lot of jams, and I definitely have some jazz mind happening. I definitely can think a little bit more like the jazz guys more than country people, but so I'm not soloing like a country guy. I'm soloing like something else, and so I'll try this stuff and that ba-ba-dee-dee, da-ba-dee-dee, it sounds kind of it sounds crazy in country. I mean, it can sound really cool if you do it perfect, but it's not, it's not a cliche like what they, ba-ba-da-da, those little stupid country cliches that sound so good in country. But then I'll try to like throw in some jazzy thing, and sometimes it sounds really awesome,
A lot of the time it's going back and forth between those two concepts that can really work.
Yeah. You were saying the throw in the sax solo in a thing when it doesn't normally have. That's what happens with me a lot whenever I'm in a band, because I'm never doing normal violin type music. I'm always playing rock and blues, and so that happens with every single band I'm in, where we're playing Blackwater. Yeah. Or not Blackwater, like Hotel California, and at the end I'm doing I'm doing violin solo on Hotel California, or some random stupid funk song, but it's violin, and so we're always trying to.
I come into the same thing as a trumpet player, like my friends I was saying that have that jam session on Thursdays, like they'll play old country songs and old rock songs and stuff. And I showed up one time, and there was a guy there. It was like the third time I went, and he hadn't been there the other two times. And he was getting ready to, be like, oh, hey, let's play this song. He's got his lyric sheets out, and he's like, oh, well, you know what? And he saw that I had trumpet. He's like, I don't even know any horn songs. And like everybody else in the room was like,
no.
He's just gonna fit in. Don't worry. And he was like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess we could try and play a horn song. And everybody else is like, nope. He's just gonna find a place to fit in.
I hate that when they say like, okay, what country can we do? I'm like, no. You do your crap and let me come to you. Don't, because that's what happens at open jams is they go, okay, let's call a random country tune that nobody really knows to fit this fiddle player. I'm like, no. Yeah. You're gonna mess the song up because nobody else knows this. Everybody else knows a 12 bar, but they suck at two steps because they play shuffles, the funks, and
Got it.
But anyway, yeah. So cool, man. What's your name of your band again?
Oh, my band's name is Multiphonic. If you go to multiphonicmusic.com, you can check out. We've got a big song list, and we've got some recordings, mostly live recordings. I'm fortunate because a couple of the guys that play in the band, they do like if you ever get the music cards from Hallmark or like the ornaments on the tree that have a song to it, they record all that stuff.
That's cool.
They play a lot of the instruments for a lot of it too. So fortunately we have like top-notch recordings and top-notch sound too. That's another nice thing. We're talking about like loading in quick and all that sort of thing. Like basically we load in as quick as possible. We have as little as possible to still have a really, really great sound. Like I've seen people bring just like a couple small speakers, and it's like, well, you did load in with a very little thing really fast, but your sound quality is not that great. So we've got like the digital board where he's got it dialed in. Like this is exactly the gate I want on this drum and this drum, and this is exactly what I want. For each thing, EQ every single thing in the mix. So it's pretty nice to be able to do that.
They don't bring in their multiphonic. Yeah, they don't bring in their triple stack for their harmonica. Those freaking guys. So.
No, I don't even have a keyboarding amp. Like I have a wedge that is my monitor that brings my brings all the vocals in and my keyboards basically, and maybe a little bit of a few other things. We do try to pare down as much as we can. The guitar player usually brings a tiny little amp,
Yeah, that's another funny thing that you just
in
said.
Your monitors as much as possible for everybody else.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's funny you just said that because like making jingle recordings for Christmas tree ornaments, in the music scene, what kind of jobs could you get?
Absolutely.
That's another one that like nobody would think of.
Yeah, they both love it. They love their jobs. It's so great. They love recording in the first place. They love, they get to basically write and arrange a lot of stuff. They get to work with other people to work together on all these things. They love it. Yeah, and it's something that, when you're 17, thinking about going to college, and what am I gonna do with my life and all this sort of thing, and then it's something you wouldn't necessarily think of, but.
Like you listen to like Family Matters or something, that show Family Matters. See, that theme song is killer. There's some shows that I've kept, and then you go listen to some of these commercial jingles, and you're like, oh my god, this is terrible.
See, my guitar player, he used to write jingles all the time for his main gig before that too, writing jingles for all kinds of stuff. But he really loved it. I know I feel like you keep trying to wind down the interview.
I'd talk about this forever, man.
Oh yeah, we could talk all day long for several days in a row, and I would really enjoy it. But another thing I love too is like everybody in my band is an educated musician. It doesn't have to be that way. There's lots of people I've played with. The first guitar player we had, he would say things like, "This is in the key of A sharp," and it was like, "Well, that's actually B flat," and he's like, "It's the same thing, right?" Well, we can explain it to you if you want, but and he was a great player. I love playing. One of my best friends. and I only don't play with him because he moved out of state. It's like that's one of the nice things about working in a band where you've got a rule that everybody has to be a nice guy, and you're all on the same page, like we talked about before. What's the goals in the band? But I love playing with educated musicians because our singer, she's an elementary music teacher too. She's a great piano player, even though I play keys in the band. But we can just say like anything about theory, and like everybody in the band knows it. I could tell the drummer, on the acapella part, can you sing the chord roots? And he's like, oh, got it, and he'll get it, and I could say like, can you take the third and then go from mi to fa when it goes to the fourth chord? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. The drummer, you wouldn't expect that, or even the singer. A lot of the time, you wouldn't expect that to be able to say like, oh, okay, can you start on the fifth of the chord with your harmony and then go from there? Right. And then she just writes a great line, it's so for me, I love being able to play with people to where you can just talk about it, and it just makes it a shortcut for all that. Basically too, like that's one of the things I try to get across to people. We were talking earlier about teaching things too soon, but like the reason for theory is that then you can talk about music abstractly and basically give yourself a shortcut. Like I could sit down and show you something and be like, oh yeah, here's this thing, but you and I could talk about it and say like, oh okay, here's this cool little chromatic lick, and I can explain it to you, and then exactly, and you can do it in all 12 keys. So that's the beauty of theory, basically, is it makes that shortcut. A lot of people try to jump to that at the beginning, though, is what I was saying earlier. Like, you got to play music first, and anybody that's great at music, if nobody's taught them theory, they've come up with their own framework of theory. They just aren't using the same names as everybody else.
Right, and that names is funny because I've had that. I mean, this is a thing back to the choosing the bands, is that everybody does this. I mean, they can sort of feel where the other guys are at. I mean, if
absolutely.
And definitely like for an example of just like theory knowledge, where you have the guys that are the cowboy chord guys, and they know about 7 chords, and they can play in these 4 keys, and they have their 3 chord songs, and then you go over to the jazz guys, and they're like, you drop them this 30 chord Stevie Wonder tune, and they're like, please, and so we all kind of do that with the whole what is your deal breaker argument of going into a band, and I'm just gonna, I have enough money, right, in my personal life or whatever, and I'm not playing with this level anymore. Sure. I'm kind of over it, and I'm gonna go in where I go, okay, this is a 6/4 2-5-1, and the guys are like, boom, and they know exactly what you're talking about.
So for me, like professionally, that's my attitude. Like in my band, that's what I want to do. But honestly, anytime outside of that, for my birthday this year, I just had a jam session in my house, and sure, there are people that could barely play.
Right? Yeah.
And to me though, like I think it's very important to make sure that everyone has that attitude of it does not matter that I am better than you at this. Like I'm going to bring it the same thing to the table, and I'm going to try and make you sound good. And you're going to do the same thing to me, and we're all going to work together, and there is no looking down on anybody. Like that's really important to me. And I asked, like for instance, I asked my saxophone player one time, because he is considerably better than I am. I took lessons from him for a couple semesters for grad credit, because I was like, for continuing education, I need credit, and I was like, I'm going to take jazz improv lessons from him, right? And I asked him one time about that. I was like, yeah, some of my friends, they're always like so thankful, like, hey, thanks for playing with me tonight. It was fun to have this little jam session in my house, and we really appreciate that you're better than us, and that you played with us and all. And I'm always like, of course, like this is what I love to do, it doesn't matter to me. I was like, how do you feel? Like, I mean, I should be thanking you every time then if that's the case, because you're considered better than I am. And he was like, man, I'm just happy people are making music. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Which, I think we talked about it when I first walked in, but, I'm amazed at, like, some of the best players that are just absolutely world-class, like that guy, Scotty, like, he's just a world-class player, Like, those guys are just the nicest guys in the world, And you hear stories, and I think people sometimes get the perception that, like, somebody who's really so great and everything is going to be some rock star attitude that's, no, most of those guys are just nice as can be, just happy that people are making music, that same kind of attitude. So I think that's really important to bring to the table all the time. In the same way I was talking before about, like, no matter what you're doing, try and bring that to the table of, like, I'm going to make an aesthetic experience out of this, even if it's like, I really don't like that song, or, or what kind of band I'm playing. I used to hate country music, and my band plays country music now, and I love it. We have a great time with it. It's so much fun.
Your attitude is huge. I mean, you can make this a horrible experience for yourself and for everybody else, and where you can make it a really good experience.
Yeah, in Vic Wooten's book, he talked about how, like, he used to look down on bluegrass, and then realize, like, no, this is a whole style of music that lots and lots of people love, Well, there's got to be something to it.
There is.
And then he found out, there is. There's a lot of great,
and
bluegrass.
Like, that's what's funny to me when you're going into bands, and you're just gonna have this terrible time you know, because your attitude is so bad. And I found that I used to have this problem where I would look at people and feel like I'm on a certain level, and then all these other guys at the jam, I'm gonna be like, oh, those guys, you know, and not just about their music playing, but about them as people.
Oh, gotcha.
You know what I mean? And that's a whole nother conversation that I think musicians tend to talk a lot to other musicians, and then we accidentally forget about the rest of the people in the world. We only have friends that are other teachers, other musicians, and I know I've been bad at that in the past, where if somebody came in to the jam and they get up there and they kind of are, you know, terrible, I kind of didn't really want to go talk to them.
Oh,
you know, and
gotcha.
I only wanted to talk to the Scotty McBees of the world, you know, and go be friends with them.
Huh.
And that was really selfish of me, you know, it was
Sure.
really stupid. And I remembered that, or I started to realize, I'm like, if I went and talked to this guy, I realized that he is like a killer engineer or a killer
Sure.
something else. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this guy is a rock star in the engineering field.
Yeah.
He just started playing like 4 months ago, but he's like an awesome, nice guy, and he just hasn't had 400 violin lessons, you know. And
Sure.
we talked about this in our interview
He hasn't
a
put in
couple days
10,000
ago.
hours, but
He hasn't put in his 10,000 hours, you know. So I've been trying to be better at that, be more
Sure.
open-minded with people, and not just have you found that musicians tend to hang out with only other musicians? And
I think I kind of know. I mean, I think
Yeah.
at this point I've surrounded myself with people who have a positive attitude about it, so I don't see that so much, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also don't go to a lot of jam sessions, so maybe that is more of a thing.
But
that
even
you
just the
sometimes see there or
scene
whatever.
in general.
Yeah.
Even
Well, see,
just,
even the scene,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
funny because my band hasn't had a lot of turnover. You know, it's only like somebody moves or like you know, oh, I'm having a baby. I'd really like to have my weekends free all the time. You know, like that's why people have left my band, right? So so I generally don't know a lot. Like people are always asking me, oh, do you know so and so? Do you know so and so? You know, and plus what I do, it's not like I split a gig with another band or anything. So you know, like sometimes I'll fill in. It's funny because people ask me if I know other trumpet players. I'm like, no, if I'm playing trumpet, like,
You know
there's
all
only
bass
one trumpet.
players and all saxophone, because you don't ever play
I know
with trumpet
saxophone players more than anything
yeah.
because our saxophone player plays so much with other people too that you know I'll call somebody else for saxophone. So I know other saxophone players because of that. But you know, but yeah, I mean, I know I can think back to like when I was a teenager, looking down on people like, oh well, they just know a handful of pop songs that are like not too good, you know. And so like I look down on that guitar player because he's not like serious sort of thing. So yeah, I do remember thinking that like when I was a young guy and also a young musician, you know. But yeah, by the time I was by the time I left college, just put it that way, I definitely had that attitude by then of like, I just want people to make music, so I need to encourage that, not like discourage it, not look down on people for anything like that. I'm just happy, when anybody's making any music, just go,
Yeah, in the gigging world, like you said, when you get into that idea of being the sideman or whatever, all my friends are bass players and drummers, because I don't ever play with violin players, so it's like they're all these knucklehead drummer and bass players that are turds, just like totally, you know what I mean. But anyway,
plus a lot of my friends are just multi-instrumentalists too, which is fun, because then you get together and play, like, for instance, a jam or something like that. And a lot of times I'm not playing trumpet. I get to play bass for a change, which I don't normally play these days, or sit down at the drum set for a little bit, and it's fun. A lot of that stuff too. It's like we were talking about styles earlier too. A lot of it is just getting in your ear what it's supposed to sound like, and then you can fake it. So I mean, I think too that's something for people is you were talking about listening, for instance, to classical music, but like I played just like last month at that jam session where they were doing the Thursday thing, and they did a shuffle, and I had played drums like I said for a year, and I learned to play like a reggae beat because we played a wide variety of stuff. I learned to play some jazz even, and I played rock songs, but I'd never played a shuffle before actually, right? But I was sitting down at the drums because there was no drummer in the room at the time, and so I was like, hey, nobody's playing drums on this, I'll go over there instead of play trumpet. And I played drums on a song, and then the next song they start up is definitely a shuffle groove, and I was like, I've never played a shuffle, all right, but I know what it's supposed to sound like, so it's like you can get that kind of stiff sound to it and everything. I was like, I can do this, So
stiff sound.
And you know what I mean? It's got that stiff kind of groove to it. I don't know how else to explain it. Maybe that's not the right word.
If I tried to play it, it would sound pretty stiff.
Well, it's supposed to sound like like the dotted part is longer than in a jazz. That's more of a triplet kind of thing. It's like how like that dotted note with the dotted eighth quarter can be placed all over the place. And so I just know what it's supposed to sound like. We got done with it, and the guy that had started the song was like, well, that's the best we've ever played that. And I was like, I've actually never played a shuffle before. He was like, what sounded great? Well, yeah, because I know what it's supposed to sound like. So I think there's another tip for people is like, get to know what all those different styles sound like. So when you do find yourself in that situation, where
you're prepared.
You're saying like, oh yeah, do your thing and I'll just fit in on fiddle. Well, you have to know what the song's supposed to sound like, what the style is. You have to know the style. And then it's fun, like you were saying, to throw in chromatic things on a song that doesn't normally have it. James, my saxophone player, he pointed out to me, like, that's what Charlie Parker did all the time. If you look at his 12-bar blues, he'll play something real melodic, and then he'll go in just blues scale, something fairly simple. You could definitely teach, a middle school kid to play some of those licks in a jazz band or something like that. And then he'll end the last 4 bars of the turnaround with all kinds of crazy harmonic neat stuff and really neat rhythmics just all over the place. And then he'll go right back into a lot of the time like an easy blues scale, more rests here and there. And, it's that back and forth between the two that really works. And so, in any style, you can say, well, I'll just throw in this for a little bit, and then I go to what the normal style is, and, you can really make something with it.
Charlie went halftime, right? I mean, he went up twice as fast or whatever on...
A lot of stuff,
on going, but he knew on
even on a ballad,
even on the ballad.
Sure.
Man, it's
cool. Yeah, those guys.
Anyway,
and it's amazing all the things you can do with music. I mean, like for Western music, we have the same 12 notes basically, and they could just be so many things you can do with it.
Yeah.
Plus we're usually playing in 3s and 4s, and even just within that, like in our Western music, there's just so much you can do. Even within any style, it's just it's just never ending. That's part of the beauty of music is that every day you learn something new, and you can try something new, and and once again, have that great feeling inside from the aesthetic experience of it. So, which is why I want everybody to make music. Be involved, whether it's dancing, playing, singing, hopefully all of the above. To some extent, even if it's just I'm playing a hand drum sometimes. I don't mean to say just, but as opposed to a drum set in a rock band or something that they might think is different than I've got a hand drum, but
Yeah, cool, man.
Just for the record, I'm not judging somebody as a lesser musician because they play hand drums.
What did the drummer get on his SAT? Well, drool.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, all right. Well, let's say your band name one more time.
Multiphonic.
Multiphonic. This has been Mark Hamblin. Thanks, man.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion. Like I said, we could talk all day. So
we probably could. Yeah. I'll be back sometime.
For people listening.
Yeah,
so.
I'll be back sometime. We'll do it again. But Mark Hamblin, get out of here. We'll see you later.
Thank you.